In May of 1983, I had an opportunity to go to China for a train, air, boat, and bus trip. I had just gotten married a few months prior. My 6'3" husband and I were going to use a 3 week healthcare in China educational program as our honeymoon. Doesn't that sound like fun? We flew into Shanghai and spent a few days sightseeing. Our first morning there, the sun was bright and shining at 4:30 in the morning. We got up, went for a walk to experience the local color. My husband and I saw the early morning market in the street where local farmers would bring in their harvest to sell. Their economy required each farmer to bring in as many pounds as was assigned to them to support the rest of the population. Anything that they harvested over the quota could be sold at these markets for their own income. Even at that very early time in the morning, bright as day and sunlight all over the place, hundreds of Chinese were out and walking about around in large groups. They loved to be together. It was almost like a sea of brunettes that were out there covering the streets like a carpet. All of them were over a foot shorter than my husband and I. Our height was such a novelty to them. They had come over to look at us as though we were uncaged animal specimens in a zoo. We had learned a little Chinese prior to our trip, and they were quite impressed that we could speak their language. We kept them laughing with our faulty pronunciations, but at least they could understand what we meant. After breakfast, we visited a city tailor where the men in our group were measured for tailor-made suits. They were to come back the next day to measure for a fitting, and the day after that, the suit would be completely ready to take home. These suits were of hand-sewn silk and cost about $80. Their fit and workmanship were exquisite. One of our educational experiences was watching acupuncture anesthesia for thyroid surgery. We were in a specialized balcony over the operating table and waving to the smiling patient below, fully conscious. The reason the patient had to be fully conscious and yet pain-free was because surgery done for thyroid gland removal often resulted in severing the laryngeal nerve. If that happened, they could no longer speak with a voice. They pretty much had to whisper for the rest of their life. Coincidentally, one of the women in our group had had thyroid surgery in the United States before our trip. Her laryngeal nerve had been severed during surgery, and she whispered daily ever since. Shanghai in those days had a population of over 30 million people. In those days, China was recognized as having had at least 25% of the world's population in their country. Their country was about the same size as our U.S. country. But can you imagine having something like 1.25 billion people? Our country currently only has like 300, at that time, our country had 300 million. China was at 1.25 billion. So the next city of interest was Nanjing. That is where we visited the Nanjing School of Medicine and Pharmacy. Many members of our group were nurses, pharmacists, or doctors. It was interesting to learn Chinese medical practices through an interpreter. Their national policy was to simply reproduce the medications that we had available without honoring our U.S. our patent rights. They were not honoring our patent rights. The Chinese were especially adept at reformulating their version of our prescription drugs, innovation had not yet caught on, but they were experts at duplication and manufacturing. They were remarkably proficient. In those years, China had just begun opening their country to tourists. They were madly constructing hotels, roadways for intended visitor income generation. Each group of tourists had a group guide throughout their trip from the airport to all the 11 cities visited in 18 days. This tour guide spoke proficient English and enjoyed playing the stand-up comedian during our train, bus, boat, and plane rides throughout our trip. One of his most memorable jokes was, "Do tell, what is the smallest room in the world?" No one in our 24-person group could tell him. The answer was, "The mushroom." That question was followed by his second question. What is the largest room in the world? Again, we were all clueless. He felt so happy to let us know the answer. Yes, room for improvement. That's why we go to Toastmasters, right? What immediately struck our attention was that all the citizens either walked everywhere or rode a bike. Only government officials were allowed to drive a car. When we bussed by a factory, their version of a corporate business, hundreds of standard black bicycles would be parked like sardines in the parking lot. Workers had shifts during the day and at night. When they got off work, they would simply take one of the black bikes that looked like all the other black bikes that were parked there and rode home. No one claimed ownership of any of the bicycles. They just got recycled from day to night use, night to day use. Now, this is all I have time to tell you about today. Stay tuned for my next speaking opportunity. I will fill you in on what I never thought possible from the most intriguing railroad, airboat, and bus trip. Till next time, Shay Shay.